Welcome back to the Creative Herd. On this episode, I actually had a Skype call with Michael Drowley. He's a creator from Australia. He runs his own production agency and is a digital creator as well online. He posts YouTube videos, but tutorials, behind the scenes from his corporate work, and even posts some vlogs. Michael actually made the leap from engineering into video production, and we talk about how he made that transition safely and smoothly. And we also talk about why having a contract is important, how to talk about budget, and how to find out what's on the table for dealing with potential clients. Michael also shared a few things that helps him slow down and keeps him from burning out. I really enjoyed this chat, and I hope you will too. Let's just dive right into it.
I was ready to go at 8 a.m. I might tell the story on the podcast. And my wife I'll cruise out. So, because right next door here is our living area. So my son and her muck around in there and play around and stuff. And we've got 2 huskies, so they're quite vocal as well. And so she's like, I'll cruise out, so you and Spencer can have time and just, it can be all chill and quiet. I said, cool. And then, so right at 8 a.m. she left, and then somehow the 2 dogs got out. And so I had to go look after that. I'll just help her to get them back, because we've got in this little complex here. And so they've got a backyard part right down the back. So things like that don't happen when you've got an office space,
Yeah, that's wild.
But, the lower overheads and the benefit of working at home and having your own creative space is awesome. So I do love it. It's just that getting that balance right sometimes is tricky. So.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Was this... where you are right now, is that always your creative space, or?
Yeah, so we set up in the beginning, it was myself and a business partner who started things, and then we set up in a spare bedroom because we started before my son was born, and then we got in a 2-bedroom flat sort of apartment. So when he was born, my son, we then moved into the garage and sort of repurposed the garage. So it was kind of it's a laundry on one end, and you can see a garage door on this side. And we kind of repurposed it. We sealed the flooring and did a few things with it, just to paint it at a good grey, a mid-grey for editing. And so it's really now a great space. It doesn't feel at all like a garage. And it's a really awesome space to create in. It's got right next to me here, it's got 2 other desks, which is, for other people. We've had editors come in and friends come in and do things in here. So it's, it's really good.
Wow. So you got a cozy little agency in there.
Yeah, that's it. Right behind me is I don't know if you can see, but there's a futon kind of layout here. So I can have clients come in and chill here. And it's just a great space for me to do my thing and be out, away from the rest of the house. And I encourage anyone to set up something like this. Even if you think your garage is dirty, just clean it. Really just give it a really good clean out, keep it tidy. And it works. It gives you an area you can go and just create. So
perfect. This wasn't always your thing, right? You transitioned from a totally different career into this creative space, making videos for clients. Can you bring us back to how you started, what you were doing, and kind of how that transition happened?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I was an engineer, mechanical engineer, and that was my first, day job or gig or hard grafts. And so I kind of followed my brother, and he went into civil engineering, and I kind of followed him into mechanical engineering, into kind of the same profession, I guess you could say. And I think what it was for me is I got to a point where it was I was kind of midway in my career. So maybe it was about, 31, 32, 33. And I was looking down the barrel of okay, where can I go from here? And I was kind of looking I was moving more into design, so more of a creative part of engineering that I was looking at, which was pretty cool. But I was looking down the barrel of what my boss was doing and what my kind of the colleagues who were just beyond me in years were doing. And I just thought, this is not really me. It doesn't really fit what I see for me, in the future, and, further along my journey. So my boss at the time was getting in super early, and he was and everyone was just wanted his attention, and everyone was just at him for the whole day. He just didn't have any time to do much stuff, and his work was really just really just managing people, and I did like the design work and the engineering work. So for me, it was like I sort of then started to think about, well, maybe this isn't exactly what it is for me. And at the time, I'd purchased a camera. I think I had the 7D, and I started to do photography, kind of not for money or anything, just for as a hobby on Instagram, and doing some lifestyle photos. I was doing some portraiture, maybe some landscape as well. And I just really took to it, really enjoyed it. And then around about the same time, I started to make some videos and do video as well. And that became part of just messing around with it and not doing anything great in terms of creativity or quality, but just kind of messing around with video and seeing how, that was. So from that point on, I sort of really started to think maybe I should, look at getting paid to do some photography stuff. And yeah, over a period of probably 2 or 3 years, it just some people in my world started to really encourage me in it and, tell me I had some skills in it. And I didn't really think I did at the time, but people sort of were, I don't know if I should applaud them or not, because, they pushed me to take the leap and start asking for money for it. But I did that. And so, yeah, it was like a side hustle for quite a while, just doing, photo shoot here or there. And and so that led me towards my first big client, landing my first big client, and then thinking, okay, well, this could be something,
Right on. So what made you buy that first camera? Is that something that you were interested in prior to, and you just kind of picked it up just randomly, or?
Yeah. So backstory is I was really into photography. So when I was in primary school, I used to look at all the photography stuff in the library. I would just get out and read every book. So and my dad had a camera. So he had an old Vivitar, SLR film camera. So I'd actually used his film camera, and I'd sort of taken film rolls of film and processed them. And I did some photography kind of at school, but my school didn't have cameras or anything at the time. They had a dark room, but it was more like pinhole cameras and more creative stuff, Mm-hmm. And so anyway, I was into photography and I knew all about it. So I knew about aperture. I knew all the stuff that people, it takes years to learn. I'd kind of learn all that through books in the library. So I knew how to set a camera up. I knew how to get better depth of field, all that kind of stuff. Maybe I was 10 or 11 years old. And that kind of led me into when DSLRs came on the scene in a big way and they became more affordable. That led me to sort of think, okay, I need to purchase one. And then taking that jump to purchase one was we just moved back from Dubai. My wife and I, we met in Dubai and about 4 years later got married and then moved back to Australia. And just after move, yeah, so it's another big story. But anyway, we're back in Australia, and I was had a bit of 2 or 3 months where I didn't have any work yet, hadn't secured a new job. So I actually went out and bought one then, so I could just utilize it. And we already, I can show you this actually. We already had this camera, the 350D. So I don't know if you can see that on there, but
right on.
That was just a photography camera, but I'd bought that when we were in Dubai off a friend, and that was actually my wife's camera. And so we were using that, and then I thought, okay, I want to get something that can do video. So that's when I got the 7D, and I got it off the back of a friend in Dubai was Solomon Ligtelem. He was doing a bit of stuff then, really early days for him, and he'd had the 7D and said it was really good, so he'd recommended it, and so that's the choice that I made. So yeah.
Crazy. So you lived in Dubai, and that was where your old job was? Back there? Yes. So when you moved back, that's when the change happened?
No, so when I moved back, I was again into engineering because it was just a stable kind of role that we could get reset and set up again in Australia. So I did design engineering for another four or 5 years after Dubai. And that's when I guess that's kind of when the side hustle became really a big part of things, when the photography, I was doing it for Instagram. My Instagram's not great or anything in terms of followers, but I was just doing it regularly on Instagram, regularly putting out landscape stuff and hooking up with some of the Instagram sort of community, I suppose. And I really got into that for a while, and then started to want to do more video content. And so, from there, it was I slowly sort of transitioned into realizing I had some skill in it, and, that's something I was really enjoying doing. So
were you landing gigs and stuff while you were at your engineering job?
Yeah. So I literally did for one friend of mine. He and again another person who's quite pivotal in this whole journey, who was pushing me in it. I did their engagement photo shoot, and that was kind of the first one that was paid, I suppose you could say. But then what happened from there is I didn't want them to pay me, like because they were good friends and everything. So I did it on the proviso that they were going to pay, and then I didn't. After I produced the photos and everything, I didn't ask them for any cash or anything like that. I just no, don't worry about it. It's your present, your engagement present or whatever. And so, but from there, I was like, they were willing to pay. It was maybe $200 or something. So they were willing to pay for my services. And so that's when it kind of switched in my brain that, okay, cool, I'm going to start to charge. And if people want something, then I'll reach out to them and say, hey, I can do it. And I thought at that time it might have been the price point was better for people because I wasn't going to be charging, $1,000 plus. I was like 200 to 300. So that's when I started to actually reach out and ask people if they wanted me to do photos for them. And off the back of that, the same person, actually a guy named Russell Cook, he got me then onto my first client because he was working for a boss at the time who wanted some video work. So he got me the sort of first meet, and then I did a job that really kicked things off for us with him. So yeah, and then I went in a pretty low price point, but then he added like all this extra stuff when I was in the meeting with him. So I just kind of went pretty hard, and it just kind of happens. It wasn't something I was pushing for, but I sort of added like another 1,000 to the job, and it ended up being like a really decent video that we did for our first one. So yeah, it was awesome. That was kind of like the catalyst for realizing the potential. Yeah. And we could probably talk about that a little later, but how to sort of position yourself and price. I think it was always a little bit arbitrary in the beginning, but I sort of figured out how to work with what budgets people had. And so we were never like, this is what we cost and this is what you need to pay. It was always like, oh, what's on the table? What can we do and what's on the table? And that's a kind of key thing, I think, to really help people to understand that there's work out there, but it's not all going to be at the same level especially when you're starting out. So.
Oh, of course. It's one of the hardest things to learn, just kind of not to be afraid of like pitching numbers and stuff like that and to get talking in that world. And once you get talking, you can see what's on the table and what the budget is and go from there. Were you the only person in like making these videos, or did you have like a little group of people or?
Yeah, so I had a business partner at the start. I started with a guy named Jordan Donaldson. And so we kicked off things together, and he was kind of he had a job, like a gig that he was doing a couple of days a week. And I, at the time, still had my full-time job. So we kind of just started to get together like outside of hours and start to riff ideas and pitch different jobs and look for clients and set up a website, so we kind of started and did things together, which was really cool. And I think that was kind of what was a big catalyst as well, because he was already really well versed with video, cinematographer and editor. He already had done quite a number of years. He was younger than me, but he'd already done quite a few years in it. Yeah, we kind of kicked off really well and did some good work together in the early days.
Bring me up to speed of like when you put your 2 weeks in. Like, how did you know you were ready to make the jump and be like, hey, I'm quitting and then I'm going to pursue this other industry and make videos full time?
What happened with that was because I was kind of in the space doing video work and on social, I was kind of talking about what I was doing. A guy who was actually at the church I was at, he had a business and they had some educational content that they were producing. So we were in talks for a little while about it, and we'd done a few projects at the church I was at. Like I'd just kind of helped out and given some time to it. Nothing really. He was running the creative. I was just kind of helping him and assisting him. So not really doing anything in terms of developing the video or ideas or anything like that. We were just kind of working together on it. He was like, I've got this kind of opportunity. Do you want to talk about it? So we started talking about this opportunity to produce some content for his company. So really what gave me my big start and the big step was he gave me a 6-month contract. I think originally it might have only been 3 months. And then from there, he was like, okay, cool. This is 3 months we can give you, but probably will extend to 6 months. So he literally from the time when yeah, when he said, look, I've got this opportunity, you want to take it? That's when I knew, okay, this is the time I need to take that step. And so I had literally a full-time production where I was we were working on a Blackmagic Ursa, and we were producing like content, filming every day, editing every day. Like it was literally,
Wow.
It was a massive uptake of task. And I think we then had planning for 6 months, but it ended up stretching out to 9 months with a few extra things added on. So I was literally 9 months, in a role, producing and editing. And that was the thing. I don't know what, depending on what your beliefs are and everything, it was like fate, some people might say, or it was like, the universe was kind of calling out to me and saying, hey, this is what you should do. Or, you could say it was God and like a miracle of God that I got that opportunity. But I think prior to that was like my headspace was in that, was like thinking, hey, this is what I really want to do, and really, believing that was available, and starting to, position myself and my mind's and mentality into taking this big leap and big shift. And when it came, when the opportunity was there, I was able to do it,
So I guess it's about like exactly what you said, like positioning yourself so you do align with those opportunities when they do come up, because he might have not known that this is where your interests lie. And like at that point, did you have to give up the full-time job that you were at? Because it's like you can't take on a 9-month contract without having everything free.
Right. I think what happened then was about a month earlier, again, by sort of I would call it, a miracle really. I'd had a conversation with my current boss and said, I want to go 4 days a week, because I hadn't, what happened is I was in mining engineering. So I was doing big mining applications. So mining truck wheels and undercarriage and massive stuff for mining in Australia. And mining had taken a big dive. So the price of oil had dropped heaps. And so the industry was kind of like, in decline. And so what happened is work had kind of dried up, and I didn't really have enough work with that company to last me the 5 days. And so also I hadn't had a raise for 2 years in that company, and I was on a great salary. I wasn't complaining, but normally I would get a raise and a bonus on the work that I was doing and the value I was providing. But because of the downturn, they weren't giving out any handouts. So essentially what happened is I went to him and said, look, I want to drop to 4 days a week, and can you accommodate it? And he just flatly said no. And so that was about 3 weeks prior to this happening. So right then and there, I was like, well, if there's no kind of understanding of like, me wanting to become something different. And he knew I was into creative media and stuff at the time, because he'd followed along a bit of my journey with Instagram. And so that was like, well, if there's no option here, I'm spending like 40 hours, 50 hours a week here, and there's no opportunity really for growth in creativity. I literally realized, okay, I got to move on, because otherwise they'll keep just capping, where I can go with my creativity. And I would have liked to be able to drop down to 4 days a week, and I think I still would have provided the value they needed at the time. And I walked out of there 3 weeks. Well, I gave him my notice 3 weeks later, and within 5 weeks I was gone. So.
Man, that's insane. That's so good though. Like it just like fell into place. It is super big right now. I think it's like actually so recently that like the culture shift in which bosses have to handle their company it's so important, because that's how your company will thrive. If you worry about your culture, and not so much like, I mean, not to not worry about the work and stuff, but if you focus on the culture and your workers and making them happy and giving them time off when it's not busy and all that, then there's no worries anywhere. Yeah,
I think it's a lesson that I think maybe I needed that clean break. But I think if you have the opportunity to do that, I would definitely recommend doing that, because you're then providing value still to your current employer who's looked after you and supported you and everything. And then you're then able to, hustle more on the side. And I think that was my game plan in the beginning, but it was like, no, you're going to do this clean. And so it's much, much harder to step out clean. Because the uptake of time as well with that new production role was I'd never been a producer before. So I literally had to learn more caveats to every program like After Effects, Premiere Pro, and all the stuff we were using, the camera Blackmagic system. Literally, there was an uptake of time where I had to spend, a bigger chunk of my time learning all that stuff as well as producing and providing that value that I signed up to. So that was kind of something that, my workload went up and the work got harder. But that's, I guess, part of the journey. So we know how hard we work as video creators. No one sees the real hours it takes. So
yeah, for sure. It's a whole nother breed of a person to be in the whole video industry as a whole, because when you have work, you're working until it's done, pretty much. Did you have any prior knowledge to like After Effects and Blackmagic cameras and stuff? Were you just thrown in and you're like, okay, I got to learn them as fast as I can. I got to learn how to use After Effects?
Yeah, I'd sort of done a little bit, and I think it was like in engineering. A lot of the stuff I did in uni was like learning programs and kind of figuring out programs for 3D design. I kind of worked for a number of years on figuring out how programs operate. And so the hardest program for me still to this day is, well, two programs really, is Photoshop and Illustrator, because they're not set up in a way that an engineer, like a technically minded person can like understand. It's a full creative program. So I'm getting better and better, but it's like still to this day, it's like things about Illustrator just grind my gears because it's not set up in like a fluid technical, step-by-step way. But yeah, I think it was a few smaller projects when I started with Premiere Pro, and maybe this segues into the YouTube thing, but learning from tutorials on YouTube was a big part of that, and just really, like I'd do the 9 to 5, I'd come home and do the family thing, and then, 8 or 9 o'clock, I'd jump on to my computer and literally work for another 3 hours to learn and to grow and to just consume content on how to produce videos, how to price videos, how to, start a business, how to build a website. All that kind of stuff came out of, YouTube really, and learning the stuff from there and then applying that in the job. So yeah, then when I got into the job role, I think the thing was I had to be really efficient with my editing when I first took this production role. And so for the first month, probably or two, I was literally working like I'd do the day job and then I'd go home and work further to just make sure I was, up to scratch with kind of the timeframes and being able to produce the amount of work that was required. So no one really knew that I was doing that to make sure that I could meet the deadlines and stuff. But for someone who's been in it for 3 or 4 years or 5 years, they've got that skill in editing to like fast track things and know how to cut up an interview and know how to like, do the titles really easily. But for me, it was all like doing it for the first time. So yeah. So although I had the knowledge of the skills required, it was still that uptake of time to like build the speed and build the understanding. So
what came first for you? Like obviously you were consuming content on YouTube, but had you escalated in making your own agency first, or did you start creating on YouTube and getting into that space?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I think what sparked the YouTube was, for me, like a little bit of a backstory. I'm always unsure. I was unsure why I didn't start it earlier, and I think one of the issues for me was my confidence. I felt like starting later was better because I developed who I was and I knew about myself and I knew what my weaknesses and strengths were. And so I didn't have a lack of confidence or insecurity. I think if I had started earlier to produce and pump out content, I think my insecurities would have really shown through and people would have not really connected as well with me. So because I kind of questioned that, because I really would have, liked to have started YouTube, at 20 years old or 25, or, the younger you can start, the better, because, people on the journey with you, then it's like they've known you from a young age and stuff like that. And you can build your audience quicker and everything like that, and build that community and give back more earlier. But I think if you're lacking confidence and that's evident on camera and stuff, then it's not going to be as palatable. People aren't going to get as much gold out of you, and they're not going to transact as much on the things that you say and what you share. So that was kind of a question I had about it. To say that, all that to say that I think when I did go on YouTube, I was ready. I was ready to pump out content. And the first few things I did on the platform was I did like an Ableton live tutorial. So for the church I go to, I was running some Ableton stuff, and so I was doing worship tracks and stuff. So I did like an Ableton live tutorial, and then people were like, hey, how do I do this? And I thought I could maybe do a video of that. So I would do a video and just send them, just a video for one person. I would send one person a video and say, hey, here's a 20-minute video on how to do this. And then they would say, the feedback was, oh, that's so good, so amazing. Oh, you should put this on YouTube, that sort of thing. And then, then moving into the client workspace where I was doing creative work and having my business, starting my business, I would do like a video for a client. Hey, here's how you boost your post on Facebook, or here's how you run SEO on your website in the back end. And I'd do a screen capture and I'd send it to them, just a video for just one person. And they would just go, oh, that's amazing. They would get so much value out of it. So I realized the value out of giving of my time on, the platform and video and creating like videos that would give back. And then I thought, well, hey, this could work for the camera gear that I use, and this could work for the stuff that I've learned about production and all of that stuff. And so after I thought about it for about 6 months or 12 months, because I still didn't really have runs on the board as a producer or as a videographer or cinematographer. But then as I started to make traction in my business and everything, I thought, well, hey, this is something now I can really give back to people. I know this works. It's worked for me in my business. And so that's when I started to share more about it and post videos, more regularly. So I think you mentioned about whether the agency was set up or not yet, and yes, it was. So I was on YouTube from like 2012, but I didn't really post anything until 2017, and then 2018 we went on holiday in Feb, and I was like, I'm going to post every single week. So it was like this decision that I made while we're on holidays is like, I'm going to post every week. And I did that. We're on holiday because I had the time to, but it like literally was taking me a week to edit one video. I just wanted to get them perfect, but then after that I kind of got, back into work back home. And then I thought, okay, I need to just speed this process a bit more and not take too long. So then I was pumping them out in, a day and a half or one big evening.
Yeah, I feel like with YouTube, you can't be perfect. You're gonna have to like let your own. It's just like, okay, it's better to be out there faster and quicker, and you get your own time because you are giving your time to people. But what I wanted to ask you was, do you have any tips for kind of like overcoming kind of the fear to post online? Like even myself, I have ideas that like I want to post on YouTube, but there's something about like putting the camera in front of myself and just kind of going for it and posting it online. I don't know what people are going to think. And do you have any tips for like making sure that you are totally in it?
Yeah, well, I think that's like I talked about that before. For me, was the insecurity factor, and I think it's probably a good thing to feel that and to know that and to have that barrier of like, I don't know if I really want to do this, or I don't know if I'm comfortable with this, because it makes you realize that that in order to do it, there's something you need to overcome, and you've got to step out in something and do it. And so for me, it was like, well, I'm actually going to let go of everything that I'm not, and I'm going to let go of, everything that's kind of holding me back, and let go of the fear of it, and just do it and put it out there. And that's a freeing thing when you're on camera and because it's funny because you just asked a question before. I looked at my screen here showing me and I'm like, there I am, that's me. Like, what have I got to say or to give or, but that's the thing that is the internal monologue of everybody, I think.
Oh, 100%.
But just giving yourself permission to try and to be like, I'm going to just put it out there. When I'm getting to the headspace of like looking at the camera lens and talking to the camera, I'm going to let go of insecurity. I'm going to let go of the fear of what people think. And so that's kind of not the presiding mood of what you're doing. So, and I think what I did is I focused on, because I'm technically minded, I focused on, all right, I'm going to talk for 20 minutes about these camera settings, I'm going to do a video on I started on the 5D Mark IV. And the first video I put out was really answering a question that was on YouTube. Felt like it wasn't being answered, which was, well, I guess it was a statement saying the 5D4 is not a bad camera. Like, I use it for my production, and it was like answering that question, and it went awesome. I think it's had 30,000 views, and I think it had been canned so much, and I thought, no, I use it and I love it, and so I'm going to like literally go out on a limb, and I could have got literally caned and hammered and whatever the words are to say, get sort of canned for it, but literally everyone who was also like, yeah, you know what? I really think it's a good camera too. Like, I actually use it and I like it. And I don't know what everyone who's on about Sony is saying, and this is not a Sony bash. I love Sony. The A7 III I think is an incredible camera as well. But it's just that thing of like people realizing, hey, I've got something to say. And I'm just going to put aside everything else. I'm going to put aside how I look on camera. I'm going to put aside that I don't feel comfortable. I'm going to just put that aside for 20 minutes and talk about the A7 III or talk about the Canon 5D or the Canon EOS R. Mm-hmm. And literally doing that is so freeing because it's just like, I'm just going to give information on that, and I'm going to just put myself aside for a moment and think about an audience who might be listening to this, who might be interested in this. And what I did as well is I was like, I don't want to just be the camera guy or the 5D guy or the EOS guy. So what I did is I put out content like, okay, I'm going to do a video that I know is going to be searchable, but then I'm also going to do a vlog with a title like I have 2 dogs, or I work out of my garage, or a title that no one's going to search for, no one's going to really find it, but I want when people to land and become part of the journey for me and subscribe, let's say, to see, okay, he's doing one a month on a camera on a technical thing that can really help me, but he's going to do a vlog and he's going to do a screen capture and he's going to talk about his business. So like literally there's this varied content so I'm not bringing people into like, you're going to get this exact video every week or you're going to learn this exact thing every week. It's almost like I'll give you a bit of that and that's going to help you. But I'm also wanting to give you a vlog like where I talk about what I'm interested in and show you my family and show you my world. And I also want to talk about how I built my business to where it is, or how you can grow your YouTube. So things like that is what how I kind of navigated in terms of creating content and then focusing on what I'm talking about in the video and not focusing on the things that I'm not.
It's so crazy that for your first kind of video that like kind of knocked it out of the park and put you on the map was so controversial. And that would have been a little bit scary for me. But I think what I personally appreciate, and I think the community appreciates about you and the way you handle yourself and put out content, is that you're just completely open, honest, and just like, here's what I think about it. There's no biases. There's no clickbait titles. There's no like this or that. It's just like, here it is. Here's what I think. And like, it's just so genuine. And I think if it's not genuine, people can see right through it.
Yeah.
And I think because people are like, okay, yeah, I like this guy. I'm going to gravitate towards him. And I think that's why it works, Yeah,
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, man. I kind of want to dive into the other side because it's like you have this public life, but you also have a totally private, like you make money, you have a family. That is probably most of your life on the other side.
Yeah, right.
So tell me a little bit about your agency and when you started that.
So about 2016, I think it was maybe the first video we did was 2015, August or September. And we didn't really have a name or anything yet. We didn't have a website yet. And that was when I started with Geordie, my business partner at the time. Within about a year, we kind of developed the idea for Pendula and the name and the branding. And we then started a website and everything within that first year. So then, by the end of 2016, we were really on the journey of like, we had a brand, we had an agency, we had like a front door, which was our website. And from there it was like we started to market pretty heavily. We used Google ads in the beginning, so Google AdWords, and it was like literally a really low spend, $150 a month US, and that was getting us maybe 3 to 5 leads a month.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it was good to start with. It really was.
But you were already getting clients and stuff before this. You had already been pursuing video production full time. Yep. So the business had been going like 3.5 years now, but that first year I was still had another job on the side as well.
And so, yeah, July of 2016, it was like, here we are. Like, I don't know where the next paycheck's coming from, you know. Or maybe we had a video that I was producing at that time. So I knew, okay, there's like $3 or $4 grand coming in once this is done. But yeah, it was literally, we were working month to month. And like I'll say as well, like, honestly, I went from, 100K take home to maybe, I think that first year it was like I took home 30 in the pocket. So I had a bit of...
You have to take the hit.
Yeah, I had a bit up my sleeve, but I really like, some of the people out there right now in the space of entrepreneurialism saying that, that might be 2 or 3 years of uptake before you're matching and exceeding what you were doing before in your career, or your sort of stable job. And I think that's true. I think we had some buffer zone and stuff and some buffer cash and some payouts and things that helped us a lot. But yeah, literally it was like a third that first, I think it was 9 months in that first year. And then,
Did you have a child at that point?
Yeah. So he came along very soon after that. So he was born July 2017. So he came up the year later after that. But like I said, right about that time is when we got pregnant. So, I'd started a business. I was fresh out on my own, and then we were pregnant with our first child, which was amazing, incredible. And yeah, it was just the best thing. But it was like, oh, I don't have an income. I don't really have a steady or stable income.
Yeah, that adds pressure for sure.
Wow. Yeah, it does. It does. And I would say, for the men out there, boyfriends, husbands, like if you got to do what you got to do. You have to look after your family. So I was blessed by having a wife who was understanding that this is more my lane, and she could tell I was not dying, but I was, locked up inside in my current career and everything. And she could see that I needed to go on a journey, and she was able to grace me with that and give me that journey. But if you're in a situation where you can't do that for whatever reason and you have to look after your family, then you just take more time, take a longer timeline, maybe do a 5-year timeline of like side hustling for longer, and building your brands. You think about your life. It's like, well, if in 5 years or even in 10 years, you're doing what you want to do and the dream's becoming reality, that's okay. At least in 10 years, you're still not stuck in a rut or doing something for a boss you don't like or for a job you don't really see a future for you in.
What's the jump from like you're making a couple $100, you land a job that's maybe like $500 to $1,000. How do you start getting like photo, video clients and stuff like that to produce maybe like a $5,000 budget or like a $10,000 budget? Because in my eyes, sometimes the video that you're delivering is exactly the same, and the only thing that's different is the price.
Yeah. And this is where it was something I had to learn, but I knew going into it because I'd watched YouTube videos on it and I'd seen how other creators had positioned it. But the basic idea is you have to work out what's on the table. So you figure out what's on the table. And so I would always enter that conversation around budget really early on in the piece. Mm-hmm. And I just got okay with saying, how much money do you have right now? If I was to say I can produce a video and it's going to be like this and it's going to do this for your business and it's going to help you in this area, how much money could you put down to do that? Are we talking $1,000? Are we talking $3,000? Are we talking $5,000? So I literally got okay with it. But in the beginning, like I remember back before I kind of got okay with that in terms of a client meeting, probably the first year, we would literally, Jordan and myself, my business partner at the time, we would sit there and go, how much do you reckon? And we'd just look at each other and think about it and throw out numbers and ideas. And because, before we had what we were worth per hour, like an idea of what we were worth per hour and what production, what a videographer is worth per hour, we would literally just kind of come up with these numbers and like, all right, we're gonna do that, all right, that's a $3,000 video, good, boom, we're gonna put that out there. So it was like very arbitrary in the beginning. It was more kind of figuring out the market and allowing ourselves to kind of not hit the mark and lose out on something, because we were like, no, that's for a half day shoot testimonial, $6,000 is like way too much right now in this market. But 3 grand's more, okay, cool. Well, we'll try it. We'll go again with this next one and we'll do, and because we had the 5 leads or 3 or 4 leads a month, in that first kind of year, I suppose.
You just tested and
we
test the waters.
Yeah, we tested and we didn't worry if we didn't get, and then get to the end of the month, we're like, oh, we really need something. Okay, well, we'll underquote this. So we know if we're competing with other companies, we'll probably get it. It was really just testing the waters and training yourself to basically approach the money question without flinching, without being like, so how much do you think, it's more like, so what are we talking about here? Like, are we talking a grand or 6 grand? Do you want a day shoot or 3 day shoot? Do you want lifestyle elements and talent, or do you want just you on camera? And it's literally like giving them all the info for them to go, well, I think, around about middle of that. So then, okay, we're working with 3 grand here, budget. We know they've got the money because we've talked to them directly about it, and then providing a quote that's maybe $28.50 or $29.50, and then at least then they know what they've got, and if they're comparing it to something else, they know, okay, well, this is what is offered, and so they know. And I think I wasn't comfortable in the beginning with doing that, but I very quickly realized, okay, this is what is how I need to position myself if this is going to not always be an awkward thing. And so the other thing is, a really important part is I actually make a phone call now. So, and we've positioned and structured everything so that you don't get much information before we're talking about a budget, before we come down to okay, what is it? How much is it? And what are you thinking? Because then it's like I'm giving all this stuff, and I was always giving, and then they might take it and use it for the next videographer, or they might use it. They might not do the video this time, and then they've got it there to go out to other videographers and say, this is exactly the brief because I've provided it to them. So now it's like it's limited information until I know we're talking a monetary value and they've got a budget and they're ready to go and ready to move.
Do you have a contract and stuff now that people have to, that's kind of the first row of business is just I'll give you a quote.
Yep.
And then from there you kind of go forward?
Yeah, so in the beginning we didn't have contracts, and we certainly do now, but it was because there was a barrier between, get the quote signed and then, here's a contract, and I've got all these things that we can and can't do, and so it was this barrier that we found it difficult to cross in the beginning. We certainly tried to implement it, but now because we've got kind of credibility, I guess, in our market here, and the work that we've done is with great clients, and then we just field a contract every single video now, and it's really easy process, and it gets signed off straight away. But before it was hard. We tried to, and I'd say be wise about it, because it's not very good to go out and do work without a contract, especially when we're talking about licensing video that you've shot, stuff that is attached to monetizing for your clients and then making money off things you produce. Yeah, that was sort of something that I always wanted to get it in place as quickly as we could, but there was an uptake of time where there was this big barrier to people signing contracts. So we'd go through the quote, everything, everyone would be really happy with everything, and then we'd field the contract, and the contract would just fall over, the whole thing would just flatline. And so that's where it was
so weird.
We tested it, and we just kept testing it, and now there's a flow to it where it's part of the process.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Have you ever not been paid for a job?
Yeah, we have.
Is that where the contract rolled in?
Yeah, we had. So there we had a quote, outlined in a quote, and so there were some terms in our quotation, but literally they just blanked. They just blanked it and said that we didn't do stuff that we did do. That was a second big contract that we had. We shot it on a red, and there was budget available, and that's where we, in the beginning, I went hard on knowing what was on the table, and I knew there was money available, so we went and did a production to that level, and it was we lost out $4,000 on that contract. in the end. So we completed it. It's part of our portfolio. They're using the video. We didn't take legal action because at the time we were small and it would have cost us more to do that. Probably would have sunk us as a company to do that. So we let it slide. I emailed the client for maybe 3 months or 4 months to try and negotiate and figure everything out, but they didn't respond to any of that. I think even if there was a contract in play with that, they still would have.
It wouldn't have went.
No, they still would have did what they did, and that's something that we just put down to experience. And we're ready for it to happen again. Like if it happens again, and it's okay, it's okay. You get another job the next month, and you try and move on as best you can. So
yeah, it's like our industry is such that it's different than the way everything else works. Everyone else gets paid kind of bi-weekly, or you got to come up with the money up front. I've been in same scenarios. Like I'm a freelance editor and I'll go into agencies and stuff and sit in for a week or something. So similar kind of experience that I went in, sat in for a whole week. And I mean, it is my fault because I'll go sit in, work the whole week, invoice them, never hear back from them, email them for a couple of months, and then it's just like, well, okay, I can't even, I don't even want to use that for my portfolio now because of the bad taste, but that's where the contract comes in, and I never really thought that was important to, get that to be signed, and, what are the terms of payment, and, I think just repetition, like you were saying, just kind of test it out, pitch numbers and get comfortable about talking about it. It's a slow process, but eventually it will become natural to say these numbers that are your rates and that appear on your invoices, and to kind of argue for this is how much this costs. If you don't like it, that's too bad, I guess.
I think as well, having the ability to say no. I've said no to things, and maybe it's a small video job or something, and just didn't feel like it was going to go from the start. Sometimes I just get a gut feel like it's not going to go well. I can do it and it'll be sweet and I'll be able to keep them happy, but really it's going to be hard. And that might mean it's meant for example, just real honest, we had a payment that was being dragged from a client, and because we're working with bigger clients now, their payment terms are up to 60 days sometimes,
That's
so
fun.
I'm like,
that's a fun one.
Yeah, I'm knocking on the door going, hey, there's a little guy who's working out of his garage, just did an amazing video for you, but you now owe me $3,000 and can you pay it tomorrow? They're like, oh yeah, that'll be in our month end in 5 weeks, And I'm like, so we were literally in this cash flow hole, and friends had to buy us groceries. They bought us 2 weeks of groceries. And so, no one will share that, but that is reality, because we might have $6,000 or $7,000 owing, and it's dragged out for 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And people are like, yeah, fantastic, high five. You just did an amazing video. It's already online and you haven't been paid yet. And your friends having to buy you groceries, and everyone is telling you, you're amazing. But if you really told people, they'd be like, what are you doing? Don't do that to your family. Don't go out and get a real job,
Yeah.
And so that's the reality though. It's if you're playing on that level, then you've got to be prepared to sort of suck that up. And that's because I have said no to things where I'm like, this is not going to be good. But knowing that saying no means, we're going to have a bit of a hole in cash flow here for, the foreseeable next 3 weeks at least. And just having an overdraft, all that's great. Having business overdraft, having credit card, that's great. But it's not wanting to go into debt on that, and having friends that are like, hey, if you're struggling, we'll, don't just use your credit card. We'll get you something. We'll buy you a few weeks of groceries to tide you over. So being able to have that conversation and being not insecure about it, and being like, this is where I'm at right now. I'm on the right path. I'm on the right journey, doing the right thing, but the runs on the board don't show that, or the bank balance doesn't show it. It's okay. It's fine. Totally fine.
Dude,
and
those are amazing friends.
Yeah, I know. And for me, it was so humbling because I didn't know how to do it, because with engineering, I was always the one doing that, because people were honest with me and I was like, hey, I just want to help you out. I want to give you this. I want to do this for you, whatever that looked like. And we had a separate account to do that, and we were really generous with other people. and generous with our finances, and then being on the other end of the spectrum, it literally the humility that develops, and like, you know, within me, it's like, wow, okay. And I didn't even know how to accept it because they just rocked up to our house with the groceries, and I didn't even know what my emotions were doing at that time. Like I was just all over the place because it was so overwhelming. Like it was so much like, whoa, you know, like here we are doing what I feel like I should be doing, but then this is the thing that's happening on the side, and you know, and why can't the client just pay right now, just do a quick transaction right now, and everything will be fine? But having
just
to
send
accept,
an e-transfer.
Yeah, it's so easy, but having to accept, okay, no, this is happening, like this is, and it's okay, this is fine.
I mean, at the same point, me and my girlfriend struggled to pay rent when I went freelance. And in my head, I was like, I don't want to be doing this every month. I'm working and I'm just paying rent every single month. And I try to get at least 6 months ahead to be like, if I don't get a job or I don't get paid for 30, 60 days, you're talking a month,
right?
2 months. Like you need to be prepared to kind of be ahead of that. And especially having a family, like a home, a child, how do you kind of battle and combat that?
Yeah. I think it's, I feel like most businesses run like on their sort of day-to-day transactional accounts, they run with a business overdraft. And so they've got that ability to sort of like bleed into the account or like, you know, go into negative because they know, okay, we've got cash flow forecast that's going to like, you know, bring that back up to, to unity. And I guess the increase every year for our business has been, there's that knowledge of there's growth in terms of like the annual turnover has gone up every year, and the type of clients we're now doing is much less jobs but bigger budgets and bigger clients. So there's been that growth and increase in how we've gone up in the market. So it's this understanding of like, we don't have a big overdraft and we've not gone into debt to be in business. So like the amount of people reaching out is, business loans and, you know, do this and do this. And I would say, don't do that. I would say, make sure you can launch it out of your own pocket or out of savings you have, or, you know, you're prepared to take that sort of leap of faith without needing to have a bunch of loans or to sort of support it and prop it up. If you look at all the, you know, the balance sheet of our life, it's way in the positive. But on a day-to-day, you know, business running basis, it might be, you know, sometimes it might be a few hundred minus or plus, you know, it might only just be like, look on paper like, oh, well, it's not doing that great. But then when you look at like the balance sheet of our life and my career and all that stuff, it's actually, you know, it's well in the positive. So I think that's how I handle it in my mind, because when you're 2 weeks strung out and you can't do a full grocery shop, you can't really put a full tank of fuel in your car, and people would say that's crazy, and maybe it is, but certainly those people that's saying that are generally not in a career they love, and you know, they may be working for someone who or doing something that's really hard on them and taxing on them, and they're not fully themselves, you know. Because I feel like if they are fully themselves and doing what they're really called to do, they can say, hey, it's going to be okay. And they can bring groceries around, right? Because that's the way I react to it now. I'm like, hey, it's okay. Like, and I whatever way I can support someone in that same situation, I can do that. I can say, hey, it's going to be okay. It's going to work out.
Few last questions. From all the creating that you do, whether it is for a production company or just putting out for YouTube, tutorial vlog, or just doing like a review, how do you avoid being burnt out from creating?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when I started doing it full time, I was creating for this production company, and I was creating all day, and I was coming home and creating like into the evening. So it's funny that and this might be good for someone listening, like if you're doing work like a day job that you don't really like, but then you can create at night, and you love that. So if you're a musician or something, you come home from job and you create music, or you like photography, you do that on the weekends. It's actually a good situation to be in, because, you know, even though you're maybe not loving your day job, you're still making a living, and you're able to do creativity, you know, in your own time and on your own terms. So I think what I found for me was and YouTube maybe is the reason and an outlet for this, is I was creating on someone else's terms and creating content that someone else had kind of given me or fed me the creative on, and trying to produce work that people were happy with, even though maybe I didn't think it was the exact right concept or, a perfect idea. And then I feel like doing that all day, then having the resource to create for yourself in the evenings still, because I still was into music. I still wanted to do my own photography, my own YouTube videos. I still wanted to, plan content and go on a shoot with a friend. So certainly there is that difference of like being in a creative job and then creating for yourself. There's that, there's a potential to get burnt out on it. And so what I found was to have more breaks, which really worked for me. And I treat it like a 9 to 5. So I sort of set up in the morning to start by 9 a.m. So, I wake up, my son wakes up like 6 a.m. So we get up and we have breakfast, we have a morning together as a family. And then like by 8:30, I'm kind of cruising to kind of get into gear for work. I might be on my phone for 15, 20 minutes, from 8:30. And then by 9 a.m., I'm literally like sitting at my desk and working. So I kind of treat it like that because I grew 10 years in engineering. I that was ingrained in me. You were 9 to 5,
Yeah.
And it kind of works good for me now with my family, because my son's up at 6. So I get a few hours in the morning with him and with my wife, and then in the evening by 5, I'm done for that bulk part of the day. And that doesn't mean I don't come back. Sometimes I got to come back and do 2 or 3 hours of power up until midnight. But usually by 5, I'm sort of out having dinner. But structuring it like that, so that psychologically I was kind of in the zone during those hours of the day, and also that my friends were and my family were like, okay, cool, he's out for those hours. There's that barrier of like, hey, I'm working now and I'm busy with stuff now. So yeah, in terms of having that balance and keeping my day structured, and then when I get really stuck, like, you get stuck in an edit and you just can't move on. You a minute into a 2-minute edit and you're like, oh, what can I do here? What clips can I use? So what I do is I actually take a break. So I'll like render the timeline and then I'll just walk across the road. So I've got like a kilometer away over the highway, which is near us. There's like a coffee shop there. There's some shops. And so I'll literally just walk over and I'll get a coffee, or I'll walk over and I'll grab like something to eat. And literally the walk from here to there, I'll leave my phone at home, I'll leave everything at home, and I'll just walk over. And that gives me like a reboot. It's almost like a reboot creatively, because I can think about what I'm stuck on without looking at it. And I can actually visualize how to kind of, okay, I could try this, I could try this, I could try this. So I might walk and I might be thinking like, yeah, what about my life, or what about my fam, or what have I got to do tomorrow? Like, not thinking about the actual thing. And while I'm kind of walking and processing other stuff, I'll be like, okay, this edit, and then I'll feel like I get, creative flow back. And then by the time I bought the coffee and go through the process of paying the clerk and saying, hey, thanks for the coffee, whatever. And then I'm walking back and I'm thinking, okay, I know what I'm going to try when I get back. I'm going to try this, and I'll literally, within that kilometer or 2 kilometer walk, I'll get clarity on what I need to do. Or I'll be like, no, I'm really stuck and I need to take an hour out. So I'll then try and hook up with a friend or something to, that afternoon to go hang out, or I'll say to my wife, hey, do you want to go grab lunch, or do you want to go grab like an early dinner or something? So I'll try and then set up time, because one of my things that recharges is hanging out with people. So being able to like hang out with someone and just riff off them, hear how they're going, share some stuff from my week, that really refuels. So I'll often do that in my week as well. And it was something in the beginning which was like, they're not a client. This is going to have no monetary value. Not that I'm trying to get money out of everybody. It's not just meaning like my time. I'm going to give an hour of my time to this person to go grab coffee, and I'm going to drive there for 15, 20 minutes, and I'm going to drive, so 2 hours out of my day, which is not going to return anything. But I realized actually this is refueling. So this is actually giving me fuel, and, just certain people, friends and who want to hang out and we vibe off each other and one another. That's been a real key and something that I've done. I'm understanding myself more and more of how I get refueled. So yeah, the one thing is to take a break and go for a walk. And then the other thing is to hang out, well, for me, to hang out with people and sort of get flow again when I'm hanging out with people, and knowing what refuels you. For others, it might be doing some music or creating something different.
For sure.
You know, or watching a YouTube video maybe to get some inspiration. That can be something for others as well. So yeah, that's my way of maintaining balance.
I feel like we're losing, just face-to-face interaction of like going to hang out with someone to have coffee, like you were saying. I don't think people are getting the value of like you actually recharge more than you would if you were staring at your phone, because your brain is just firing like when you're looking at your phone, doing so many things at once. When you're with somebody, you're totally engaged, and it's more like a calm experience, I want to say. And like when you come back, I totally agree with you that you feel refreshed. And I feel like we're slowly falling away from that, because it is something not just in editing, but pretty much anything you can kind of get run down and burnt down. And it's really important to like be in tune with yourself and find, okay, maybe reading a book is what I need to do at least every week, just to read a couple pages to reset my brain and to slow down, and just to remember that, the time is time, but like I deserve to just be calm in some of that.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting you mentioned books, because I think the problem with social is there's no start and end point, and it's not structured. When I went through university, like we learned how to write an essay. And an essay is, you got an introduction, you got a body and a conclusion. So you've got to start, kind of middle and finish. But with social, it's this endless cycle of no start point really and no finish point. So it's really aimless. I feel like it's, sort of scrolling online is kind of aimless, because you might land on people who have got great stories, let's say Instagram stories. And so they've got a start and a middle and an end, and that's really good for your brain. But there's no sort of process of going from, okay, here's an idea, and I'm going to then read how this is fleshed out in the middle of this book. And then by the end, I'm going to have a conclusion to what that idea means and how I can apply that idea or what I can do with it. So that's my thing. And blog posts, can be well written, and they can be written in that essay format, but they can also just be like a bunch of ideas in a post that doesn't really start anywhere or end anywhere. And you're reeling at the end of it, trying to figure out, okay, what does that even mean? And okay, where do I go from here? So I feel like that's the issue. And that's why books are really, really important, to get a collection of ideas or an idea that's really fleshed out in one small package in one sitting, or like, a few weeks of reading a book, you get that download in, and it's really good for your brain. And people, I think we're losing that a little bit. Certainly writers and writing has changed. And I never used to be that much of a reader, but now I really try and make time to read content in books, because it's in book form, because it's structured and it goes from start to finish. Yeah.
What would be like one thing that you would suggest to people, maybe something that you do daily or weekly or monthly, that kind of just calms you? I don't know if it is actually reading a book or hanging out with friends, just something that, any listener could just be like, you know what, I'm going to try to implement that into my own life.
For me, I've always been into music. So literally I've played for like since I was like 10 years old. I started to learn acoustic guitar and sing.
Oh, right on.
So that's kind of been my outlet. Even as an engineer, I was always doing that behind the scenes. So now it's changed a little bit, where like musically I'll like compose something. Like I've got a keyboard, audio keyboard. So like I'll compose something that no one will ever hear because I'm not a composer really. But it's just I'll make some sounds and I'll make some beats, and maybe one day it'll be in a video. I don't know. It's just like ideas.
Dude, put it in a video, man.
Yeah. But it's literally, it's creating, for me, for myself and stuff that people won't necessarily see, because a lot of what I create now is, like the corporate stuff and commercial stuff is for businesses to promote stuff, and the YouTube is for me to give back, and so people, to add value to people. So people are consuming content I'm creating and things I'm creating. So I feel like I'm in the core of me, I'm a creator, a creative person. then I need to have things that are just stuff that I doodle with. It's like a sketchbook that you open up and you just kind of like sketch ideas and no one really sees it, and it's not something you're going to release or sell. So for me, that's music still. So I've got an acoustic that I'll jump on and jam maybe only once or twice a week, and then like
That's amazing.
Yeah, once a month I'll pull out the M Audio and I'll just like run with some beats and I'll muck around with some synths and some ideas and create some pads. And I actually did a little thing recently where I recorded a voiceover and I put it to this cinematic track, and it was like something I created for me, but I'm like, this is actually good. For the first time I was like, this could be something, I was like, this is actually, should I try and do this more? And so maybe it'll become something, but it doesn't have to either. And there's no pressure on that side of my creativity to monetize it or to need to, create value for someone else in it, which is quite freeing as well. So it's just time spent, refueling, recharging. So for whatever that is for the listeners, is like, it could be for you, it could be, hanging out with a friend, or it could be, producing a kind of video that is more you than what you're currently producing for, to make money. It could be not music, it could be some other thing like running or fitness or all sorts of stuff, but it's just you time. So
like more important to like do something that you want and necessarily maybe not put it out, like that's not the important part.
That's right.
Where can people find you online?
So I've just recently set up michaeldrowley.com. So my business is called Pendula Digital, and that was where like portfolio and everything was on there, but now it's all moved across to michaeldrowley.com, and then Pendula is just for the corporate work I do. So check out michaeldrowley.com. I've got a gear page on there, the gear that I use. I've got a giveaway at the moment that I'm running. So you can check out the giveaway for a mouse, and check out my YouTube channel. That's where a lot of the content weekly will go up on the stuff that I do, my business, the camera gear I use, all that sort of thing. So check it out.
Right on. So YouTube and your website, is that the best place? And Instagram?
Yeah.
So throw your Instagram in there? Instagram
is Michael J, the letter J, Drowley. So check that out too. I do some Insta stories from now and again. I'm not as active on Instagram. I love YouTube as a platform because it gives back to creators. That's why I think it works. It's a community of creators, and because it gives back, creators want to hang out there and be there. So I feel like Instagram's still a little bit more look at me and more, not as geared towards creators. So that's why I'm not as active on Instagram, but I have a presence there and I do some behind the scenes Insta stories, which will come out, once a month when I'm on a project. So you want to check me out on Instagram as well, go for it.
Well, thanks for joining me this morning. I guess your morning, my night, but it was great talking to you, man. Appreciate it.
And thank you so much, Spencer. I really appreciate being part of what you're doing, and I hope it goes really well for you.
Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or just want to say hey, email me at hello@thecreativeherd.ca, and I will see you in the next episode.